and say hello to the second boss of the game, the Abstract Daddy. Symbolizing Angela's father, this walking door with a mouth is rather easy to take down and will be dead shortly.
Are you okay? Angela, relax.
Don't order me around!
I'm not trying to order you.
So what do you want then? Oh, I see. You're trying to be nice to me, right? I know what you're up to. It's always the same. You're only after one thing.
No, that's not true at all.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead and say it. Or you could just force me. Beat me up like he always did. You only care about yourself anyway. You disgusting pig.
Angela.
Don't touch me! You make me sick. You said your wife Mary was dead, right?
Yes. She was ill.
Liar! I know about you. You didn't want her around anymore. You probably found someone else.
That's ridiculous. I never...
With Angela's quite obvious schizophrenic behavior, and the roots of that becoming even more apparent now, the Abstract Daddy, as can be assumed from its name, is representative of her father and the real demon that's been haunting her life for so long. The Abstract Daddy, with its large lumbering form and the form of a door, is meant to represent her childhood of when her father would approach her bedroom door and be waiting there to make his entrance and sexual advances known. Also, paying attention to its multiple puckering lips and obvious lumbering form, we can only assume even more that a lot of the Abstract Daddy's ideas are very centered around sexual themes, and the idea, more or less, that this was obviously a very threatening and imposing figure, especially to a tiny child. Now, in this particular room, we have 6 hanging figures, and on each one of the hanging figures' faces, we have a different piece of paper outlining the crime that they committed and the fact that they were hung for said crime. Now, the reason that we are wanting to pay attention to each one of these is going to be important for the next real puzzle of the Labyrinth. In this room we have 6 empty waiting nooses, and a rather long poem waiting for us to read. Dead men, swinging in a tree, how many dead men do you see? tongue turned blue and face gone gray, watch them as they twist and sway. The first one killed the butcher man, then cooked him in the frying pan, served him to his hungry guest, and gave them seconds on request. The next one with his smile and sweets stole poor children off the streets. To men who dressed unsavory, he sold them into slavery. Breaking into a home at night, the thief he had a nasty fright, filled his foolish head with ale, woke in the morn in the county jail. The artist with his daunting skill tried his hand at painting bills, but caught in rain he was undone when the ink he'd use start to run. With promises of great return, taking gold he did not earn, bundled it up out of sight, quietly slipped off into the night. 3 houses into ashes burn, the sheriff, with no place to turn, did spy a stranger to his town, locked him up and beat him down. Dead men, swinging in a tree. How many dead men do you see? 6 foot long and 6 men wide, round their necks the noose be tied. So basically from that poem we were able to gather that 6 men were hung, but one of them was hung unjustly. Now the point of the puzzle is to pull the noose of the one that was actually not guilty of their crime. When I had recorded this, I accidentally forgotten which one was the arsonist, who, if you remember the last stanza of the poem, was the one that was wrongly accused by the sheriff of the town, mostly because he was a stranger. I figured at least I would leave this in, mostly to illustrate what would happen if you do happen to pull the wrong noose. By going back into this previous room, you'll see that nothing has changed. And it struck me that I had actually pulled the noose of the murderer, while the arsonist was right across from them. For getting the puzzle wrong, and continuing to get the puzzle wrong, you'll be greeted by 3 lying figures in the hallway. This can actually be a bit dangerous if you're not ready for it, or if you're just under-equipped, considering that by this point you've never really had to deal with 3 lying figures at once in a very narrow space, and they can easily quite overwhelm you and corner you, if you're not ready. But with the proper noose now pulled, we're able to go into the previous room and get our reward for solving the puzzle. The Key of the Persecuted. So with our Key of the Persecuted, we are able to open up these handcuffs and allow ourselves continuation through the labyrinth. And thankfully, we are actually just about done with the actual labyrinth itself, and we should be heading into what could be considered the epicenter, and hopefully see if we can find any answers, and maybe a way out of this horrible, horrible place.
Maria? Maria? Maria, no! What happened to you? Why? Why? Mary.
And yet again, James has lost Maria, and in turn, lost his idea of Mary. But what had happened to Maria? Clearly it wasn't the same stabbing that had occurred from Pyramid Head before, but instead it looked like she'd been rather beaten, bruised. So, what actually happened to her? Well, we still have one character that we haven't run into in quite a while, and that's our rather portly associate, Eddie. So what we have here is a rather odd little graveyard. It's still not exactly what I would call the center of the labyrinth itself, but it does have one or two very interesting